Today we are going to talk about automating CDISC metadata retrieval based on
My
our
video is
approach
not working.
using the CDISC Library API. The today's agenda would be like we will talk about what is CDISC Library, what are the APIs, what is the RESTful API, what are the different HTTP methods within the RESTful API that we can use to retrieve this particular information, what are endpoints and parameters, how we can access this CDISC library, how to raise the API request through R, which package we can use, and then extract the data from the JSON file. And then we'll talk about the conclusion. So now what is a CDISC library? CDISC library is a single, trusted, authoritative source of CDISC data standards metadata and control terminology. It is a cloud-based metadata repository that is available on Microsoft Azure platform. And there are two important components of this particular CDISC library. What is data standards browser and the API. Now, what does this data standards browser mean? The data standards browser means that it contains information related to the SDTM, ADaM, and control terminology. What kind of information that is available is the SDTM implementation guides, ADaM implementation guides, and control terminology. They are available in the PDF format as well as XML and JSON formats. Now, the whole concept of this particular presentation is using the API, how we can extract this particular JSON files of SDTM implementation guide, ADaM implementation guide, and control terminology. So for this, let's understand what is an API. API is an application programming interface. It is a communication between two applications. So it is a relationship between a client and a server. There is a different types of APIs, that is private API, public API, and partner API. Here in the CDISC, if at all you want to access the CDISC library, right, you are supposed to use the public API. So you have to create your own login credentials after you register. Then once you get the login credentials, then you can access the CDISC library. Now, to explain the application programming interface better, as I said, it is a relationship between the client and server. What does the client will do? Client will send a request to the API. Then some kind of action is performed, and then the API will send the response back to the client. So this is the whole process that you can see it on in the image as per the image. What is REST? REST is a representational state transfer. So it is a bunch of functions which the developer use to send the request and receive the response. Okay, basically this RESTful API is used to retrieve the data, especially in the form of XML or JSON format. So JSON here is nothing but JavaScript object notation. And there are different methods that the RESTful API use to do this particular job. So these particular HTTP methods are available in the form of post, get, put, and delete. Since we need to get this particular JSON file from the CDISC library, we will be using the HTTP method get. Okay. So now, once we use the HTTP method get to get the particular information, right, there will be different types of codes that this HTTP method will give us. Okay. It means that if the connection is established properly, or if the connection is not established properly, what are the reasons? If at all you get the HTTP code as 200, okay, it means the connection is established. So we can access the data. If the connection is not established, or if the data is not found, then you will get different types of error, like 404 not found, which is common. Okay. So this is the normal HTTP link that we can use, the API HTTP link that we can use to access the CDISC library. So here the main important things are the endpoints and the parameters. You need to have the proper endpoint, you need to know the proper endpoint and the parameter to access that particular information or file from the CDISC library. Okay, so since we, as I have said, we will be using the HTTP method get to access the JSON file, appropriate JSON file from the CDISC library. So here we will be using the SDTM implementation guide as the endpoint, and 3.4, 3-4, the version. Means we are trying to access the SDTM implementation guide version 3.4. using the API key, which is the 32-bit API key, which you will get when you log in or when you register with the CDISC library. Once HTTP request is accepted, then the connection is established. Then it will give us a HTTP code 200. Okay, it means the connection is established. Now you can retrieve the information. Now, what are the different types of endpoints and parameters? So here I detailed out all the different types of endpoints and parameters that you can use to get this information, because you need to give the proper endpoint and parameter. If you give a wrong endpoint and parameter, you cannot access the data. Okay. Now, as I said, you need to log in, give the appropriate API key, which is 32-bit API key, and then once the connection is established, then you can get the information. Now, what we have seen previously is the manual way. Now we have to do it programmatically. So for this particular purpose, we are supposed to use a R package called as HTTR2. This is the package that we are supposed to use to get this particular access. Okay. So first of all, you need to use the URL. Here we are using SDTM implementation guide as the endpoint, 3.4 as the parameter. Then HTTR2 package functions like request underscore headers, where you can enter the API key and what type of file you want to retrieve. Once the request is successful, you can fetch the response using the request perform. And once you get the response, from the particular response, you will extract the JSON file. Once you get the JSON file, now you need to extract the data from this JSON file. Now, this particular JSON file is generally in the form of a list. It can be a label list or a list of list. Now, you need to convert this particular list, manipulate it or flatten it to convert it into a data frame to visualize, because we cannot analyze, we cannot get proper information by seeing the list. You need to convert that particular list into a data frame, and this can be done using the map functions. Here I have used map DFR to create the data frame. Okay. So once I did this one, right, I am able to successfully create an SDTM implementation guide data frame with classes and data sets. Okay, it just gives what are the different classes of the SDTM and what are the different data frames that are available in that particular classes. Now, if at all I want to extract SDTM implementation guide with the data sets and variable information, right, you can use the same JSON file, use this particular code, create a data frame, and once you do this, then you will get the SDTM implementation guide with all the data sets and the variables, appropriate variables that we can derive in this particular domains, and their appropriate code list and all that information. What is the type of label, name, description, role, core, all this information will be here. I can use the here I can check AE as well. I can also check DM. So everything will be there in one data frame. By simple subsetting, you can get this information available right on your screen, Okay. Okay. So now going further. Okay. Sorry, just a moment. I think okay. So this is what we did. And now coming to the control terminologies. So now coming to the control terminologies, in the same way how we are able to successfully access the SDTM implementation guide, right, and retrieve the information, we can do the same thing for the control terminology also. But here also you are supposed to know the appropriate control terminology endpoint and the parameter. Okay. So here you are supposed to know the SDTM CT, the parameter, and then you need to raise the request, and you need to use the API key specific for your login, and then fetch that particular response, convert that particular response into a JSON file. Then it will create a CT list, or control terminology list of list. Then you need to convert that particular list into a data frame. Okay, once you convert that particular list into a data frame, that code list will look like something like this. Okay, so it will look like something like this, where you can have all the code lists. There are now 10,708 code list, uh, code lists that are available. So this is how you can retrieve it. And this particular code list is specific to the SDTM. Now, conclusion. The main purpose of this particular API is we can avoid physically downloading the SDTM implementation guide and ADaM implementation guides. Right? Earlier, we used to physically download these implementation guides and we used to refer them. But now we can actually directly download these particular files from the CDISC library in the JSON format. And the advantage is that we can immediately access whatever the type of version that implementation guide you want to refer, right? We can immediately access it. Else, if at all you have to go with the physical files, right? Then you have to search for that particular file. You may find or may not find that particular version available to download it physically. But using the API case, you can immediately go to that particular version and see it, refer to it. So this is one biggest advantage of this particular approach. So these are some of the references I used to write this particular program to extract this particular information from the CDISC library using the API. And this is, thank you so much for this opportunity. And this is the GitHub account, my GitHub account, which you can access to refer to this particular slides. And also, if at all you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can scan this code to connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for this opportunity.